You may pray every day with sincerity, asking God for help, direction, healing, or a breakthrough that has not arrived yet. Still, there are certain words that can quietly weaken the way you approach Him. They sound harmless at first. In some cases, they even appear humble. Yet beneath the surface, they reveal hesitation, fear, or shame. That matters because prayer is not only about what you ask for. It also reflects what you believe about God, about His character, and about your place before Him. Today, I want to show you 3 expressions that should not dominate your prayer life. Once you recognize them, your prayers can become clearer, stronger, and far more rooted in faith. Many people assume prayer is simply speaking to God about needs. That is part of it, but not the whole picture. Prayer also exposes the condition of the heart. A person can use spiritual language while still carrying deep uncertainty. Someone may kneel with devotion and at the same time speak as though heaven is distant or unwilling. This is where words become important. Language does not replace faith, but it often reveals where faith has grown weak. Certain expressions train the mind to expect disappointment. Others reinforce the idea that God is reluctant, absent, or unreachable. Over time, those patterns shape the way a believer prays. Instead of approaching God with trust, prayer begins to feel tentative. Instead of confidence, there is caution. Instead of closeness, there is emotional distance. That is why these 3 expressions deserve attention. The first expression is, I hope. Hope can be beautiful when it is grounded in trust. The problem begins when it becomes a softer way of saying, I am not sure God will respond. You may hear it in prayers like, Lord, I hope you help me through this. I hope you still have a plan for my life. I hope this pain eventually changes. There is nothing dramatic in those sentences, which makes them easy to overlook. Yet they carry a quiet uncertainty. The heart is not standing firmly on God's goodness. It is waiting nervously to see whether He might act. Picture someone holding an invitation in their hand while remaining outside the building, worried they may not be welcome. The invitation is real, but their hesitation keeps them at the door. Prayer can become like that. God has already shown His willingness to hear His children. Approaching Him with trust does not mean forcing an outcome. It means refusing to treat His care as doubtful. A stronger prayer would sound like this: Father, I trust you to guide me through what I cannot understand right now. That wording does not pretend the situation is easy. It simply places confidence where it belongs. The second expression is, maybe one day. This phrase often sounds patient, yet it can hide resignation. Maybe one day I will feel whole again. Maybe one day God will use me. Maybe one day this burden will finally lift. Waiting is part of the spiritual life. Resignation is something else. A person can accept God's timing without talking as though His promises belong only to some distant future. When every good thing gets pushed endlessly forward, faith slowly loses urgency and expectancy. Think of a musician who buys an instrument, keeps it in the case, and says, maybe one day I will learn to play. Years pass, but nothing changes because intention never becomes engagement. Prayer can slip into that same pattern. The heart speaks about restoration as if it lives far away, detached from the present work of God. A better response would be, Lord, begin shaping me through this season and strengthen what feels weak in me today. That prayer leaves room for process. At the same time, it recognizes that God's work is not postponed until some unknown future. The third expression is the most damaging. I am beyond repair. It may not always come out exactly that way. Sometimes it appears in subtler forms. I have failed too many times. God must be tired of me. There is probably no purpose left for someone like me. These thoughts sound like humility, but they are actually a verdict of hopelessness. Repentance admits sin. Shame declares identity. Those are not the same thing. A repentant heart turns back to God. A shame-filled heart assumes return is pointless. One opens the door to renewal. The other locks it from the inside. Imagine a house after a storm. Windows are broken, water has leaked in, and parts of the roof have collapsed. The damage is real, but repair is still possible. Declaring the home worthless does not make that judgment true. Human failure works in a similar way. Sin should never be minimized, yet neither should God's mercy be treated as fragile. A healthier prayer would be, "Father, I have sinned and I need your mercy. Restore what has been damaged and lead me back into obedience." That sentence acknowledges failure without surrendering to despair. These three expressions share a common problem. I hope weakens trust. Maybe one day delays expectation. I am beyond repair turns failure into identity. Together, they create a prayer life shaped by doubt, postponement, and shame. No believer needs to live there. God is not honored when his children speak as though his compassion is uncertain. Faith does not require pretending pain is absent. It does require refusing to let pain define God's heart. The words chosen in prayer should move the soul toward truth, not farther into confusion. A different posture becomes possible once these phrases lose their grip. Prayer grows steadier. The heart becomes less reactive. Fear no longer controls every request. Guilt stops taking up all the space in the room. Trust begins to form at a deeper level. That does not mean every answer arrives immediately. It does not remove struggle, waiting, or correction. It changes the way a person stands before God while facing those things. Confidence in prayer is not arrogance. It is agreement with the character of the one being addressed. Consider the shift in language. Instead of saying, "I hope you help me," try, "Father, I trust your wisdom in this situation." Rather than, "Maybe one day I will change," say, "Lord, continue the work you have started in me." Instead of, "I am beyond repair," pray, "Your mercy is greater than my failure, and I choose to return to you." These are not magic formulas. They are ways of aligning the heart with truth. Speech shapes focus. Focus influences expectation. Expectation affects the way a believer perseveres. Pay attention the next time you pray. Notice whether fear is hiding inside your words. Listen for resignation dressed as patience. Watch for shame trying to sound spiritual. When those patterns appear, stop and choose a better confession. A simple declaration can help. Father, I come to you with trust. I will not treat your goodness as uncertain, your work as permanently delayed, or your mercy as too small for my failure. Teach me to pray with faith, humility, and confidence. That kind of prayer does more than change a sentence. It changes posture. It moves the heart away from suspicion and back toward trust. It reminds the soul that God is not distant, that waiting is not abandonment, and that failure does not get the final word. Once that truth settles in, prayer no longer sounds like a hesitant appeal from far away. It begins to sound like the voice of someone who knows they have been heard.